12-year-old girl named Abigail is peacefully practicing her ballet dance in an empty local theater in the state of Massachusetts at night. Outside, Joey is waiting for something, but she is soon summoned by someone in a car, and we can see that she is armed. There are two males in the car. Peter is behind the wheel, Frank is in the passenger seat, and Abigail is still practicing her soft ballet moves in a van. 3 more people from Joey's group are visible in the vehicle. Sammy is an excellent hacker in invasions. While his co-workers in the van are obviously nervous about something, Rickles, an experienced sniper, and Dean, the getaway driver of the van, put on their beanie and a cloth to cover part of their faces before going out with their rifle, climbing and setting up on a rooftop, and aiming at a mansion's garden. Abigail leaves the location after her rehearsal is over and puts on her top. As they go, we notice a locator attached to the bottom of the Rolls-Royce Phantom, which is later identified as having been put there by Joey's crew, who get a notification that the vehicle is already moving and put on their masks and beanies to prevent recognition. When their accomplice automobile soon arrives, Sammy and Dean are still waiting in the van. At this point, Sammy has complete access to the mansion's security system, which enables Joey, Frank and Peter to approach the home gate without incident. Sammy gives his cronies permission to enter the building and move forward till they get at a child's room. The group in the room is alerted when Abigail's car pulls up and enters the mansion. When they realize it is a young girl, they have to kidnap her. Joey expresses outrage, saying they did not tell her it was a child. Frank quickly contradicts her, telling her that she can quit and leave if she wants to. Joey sees no choice but to continue, and they all hide behind the room's furniture. When Abigail gets home, she heads straight to her room after receiving a call from her father, which we know she is alone at the moment. Following the phone call, the kidnappers move quickly, with Frank holding Abigail on the bed. However, the girl stabs him in the hand with a pencil, and the other members intervene, with Joey stopping Frank from trying to hurt her. When Joey sedates Abigail, Sammy outside alerts the group inside the house that the girl's father is coming. The criminals quickly put Abigail in a big bag from the roof. Rickles warns that they only have 10 seconds before the father enters the house, but Frank says they can leave in 9. They hear Abigail's father calling her as they are leaving, and when they are outside close to the exit, the house alarm goes off. The group then flees, and Sammy opens the gate at the same time they stop the van in front of them. After everyone gets in, they quickly leave the scene. After Joey makes sure Abigail is alright, they blindfold her after pulling over slightly behind a vehicle to avoid being seen by the security camera. Frank swiftly interrupts Dean when he asks for Sammy's name, reminding him that they must never know the identities of their accomplices. They speed up because the objective is to transport the girl to another distant estate in the midst of a forest once they get there. After they place Abigail in a room, Lambert, the mastermind behind the entire plan, gives them all the information they need to know. He claims that the difficult part of the work is already finished and that all they need to do now is watch the girl in that mansion. Joey asks who Abigail's father is, and Lambert replies that he is a very wealthy man who was about to lose $50 million, the ransom price for the girl. He assures everyone that they are safe there, but he must take everyone's cell phone to prevent the possibility of being tracked after taking all the cell phones. He says that only Joey will remain near the girl to watch her, and the others can make themselves at home. Lambert provides some last directives. After settling down and taking part in a session where Joey reveals the traits of each person, who turns out to be highly perceptive in studying each person's behavior, he says goodbye with a sardonic smirk, calling them rats, leaving everyone perplexed as to why. Following this bonding amongst the members, Joey visits Abigail's room and discovers that the girl has already woken up. Frank also suggests that she must be in recovery from addiction, citing several traits that she cannot refute. Seemingly terrified, Abigail requests Joey to take off her tight blindfold. Joey then covers her mouth and nose with her mask and, feeling terrible for Abigail, takes off the blindfold before releasing the handcuffs and placing them in front of her to help her feel more at ease. Abigail sobs and asks if they will harm her, but Joey reassures her that nobody will and that everything will be alright if she behaves and her father delivers the money he wants. Joey makes a pinky vow that no one will harm her in order to ensure this. After speaking with the kid further and hearing her claim that her father does not care for her, Abigail learns that Joey is the mother of a boy who is about her age as well as her name. Joey says she is going out but we will be back soon, but Abigail stops her before she can go and oddly apologizes for what will happen to her. Joey asks Frank, who is downstairs with the others, if he knows who Abigail's father is. She claims that the girl made it obvious that her father is a violent person, and she finds it odd what the girl stated before leaving the room. However, when Frank says he does not know who her father is, he implies that the girl probably said that to try to frighten her. Joey responds that she does not get scared easily, but when she does, she becomes more aware of things. Frank then sneaks into the room where Abigail is and makes her reveal her father's name, which surprises Frank. Frank hurries downstairs, gathers his belongings, and tells everyone that he is leaving so they can have their share. Joey and the others follow him to the door, curious as to why he made such a snap decision. He then claims that they are all lost because the girl is actually Christoph Laser's daughter. However, Dean claims that he is merely an urban legend, but Frank maintains that it is about someone who is really genuine, active in the criminal world, and similar to the Antichrist himself. Frank agrees to stay and carry on the action after they have a brief conversation about the situation they are likely getting into. Since he believes in Lambert, everyone needs to be on the lookout for any movement that night. They will distribute what each person needs to do while Rickles sits upstairs with his gun to maintain watch. Joey, who guards the property, discovers a spacious room with numerous books and a window flapping in the breeze when she hears an odd noise coming from the back of a corridor. Joey fully opens the window and notices how old the place is. Meanwhile, Dean, who has been chased out of Sammy's room after frightening her, explores the place and discovers some strange paintings in a dark area of the house. Among them is a picture of a woman and a girl who are both wearing very old clothing, leaving Dean bewildered. After that, he heads to the kitchen, where a door behind him opens by itself. Thinking this is odd, he goes to see if anyone is there and discovers the deeper part of the house, which resembles a sort of basement filled with old junk. Since there are no rats there, he decides to go back, but before he can do so, he is knocked down by something and dragged away while yelling for assistance. Sammy, on the other hand, hears the noise from her room and goes to investigate. She finds the strange kitchen and sees the area that Dean saw. She calls for him, but no one answers, so she decides to leave. When she gets to the kitchen, she is shocked to see Dean sitting in the chair, but when she touches him, his head falls into her hands, and she is terrified and screams, waking up Peter, who is sleeping nearby. And when he gets there, he is astonished to find Dean's condition. He runs to see what is going on. When Peter gets there, Sammy instructs him to call the others right once. When they witness it, they all wonder how Dean got into that position and speculate that it might have been the girl's father who had already learned everything and dispatched one of his hitmen. Rick shares a story he heard about some hitmen led by Abigail's father who claimed they were surrounded by an FBI team and had no way out. However, the FBI sent additional officers to the scene the following day after observing the absence of the police group, and they discovered only the bodies of the first group, who had been ripped apart as though they had been killed by a wild animal. No one believes this, so they decide to check on the girl in the room, and when they get there, they discover Abigail there. However, Rickles declares that he no longer wants to take the chance and that he will be leaving from that point on. When he gets to the exit, he finds that the door is fully secured with security bars. At this point, they start to hear sounds coming from the house and quickly learn that big metal plates are rising and blocking off all potential exits, leaving everyone baffled and unsure of what could be going on. Rickles quickly returns to his previous location with his rifle after Joey implies that it is all a trap, only to discover that the area has been closed off and that his weapon is no longer there. Joey runs to Abigail's room and asks whether anybody else has been there with her. The girl confirms that no one else has been there, but she claims that Frank intimidated her by telling her something she could not tell anyone. After Joey gets her to talk, the girl tells him that Frank claimed to be Valdez, one of the assassins from the narrative Rickles told everyone earlier, and that he works for her father. Rickles then shows up at the door and calls for Joey, screaming that someone stole his rifle. The girl then tells Joey that Frank is actually Valdez, but they quickly start to notice that things do not match up and that some of Frank's behaviors do not make sense if he were Valdez. Nevertheless, they decide to make a plan to find out what is really going on just to be cautious. However, as soon as the two separate to carry out their plan, Rickles is attacked. When Joey investigates, she discovers that his face was slashed to his neck, causing him to fall to the ground lifeless. Joey then goes to the other's location and, with her gun aimed at Frank, demands to know what he intends to do with everyone present. According to Joey, Frank is really Valdez, and he killed Dean and Rickles as well. The girl is attempting to turn everyone against one another, but Frank says he did not say anything to Abigail. Frank suggests that in order to find out the truth, they should speak with Abigail and get the truth from her, but Joey refuses, claiming that no one is going there to harm her. Nevertheless, Peter escapes and runs to the room, but Joey follows closely behind. Once there, Peter points his gun at Abigail and demands the truth. However, Joey swiftly disarms him and seizes the initiative. A standoff ensues when Frank also shows up and holds the gun at Joey. Abigail merely takes the handcuffs off her wrists and stands on the bed as everyone is arguing. She poses as though to perform a ballet, then her face abruptly changes and becomes terrifying. Everyone is astonished when she jumps on Peter and tries to bite his neck, but Frank shoots her. To their even bigger surprise, Abigail, who before looked dead, rises as if nothing had happened. In horror, Sammy and Peter flee the place in panic. After Frank and Joey stare in shock at the spectacle, the girl yells and attacks them, and Joey fires at her multiple times. Her shots, however, are ineffective, and they are forced to exit the room, slamming the door behind them as Abigail screams in terror. Downstairs, they attempt to understand what is going on and come to the conclusion that Abigail is a vampire. The group decides they need to find a way to leave as soon as possible after the girl's screams abruptly stop and everything goes silent. Frank asks Sammy to hack into the house's security system, but she says there is no internet and even their cell phones are not with them because they are unable to leave and have no other option. After Joey questions how they might possibly kill a vampire, they arm themselves with what they think they need and proceed to the chamber where Abigail is. But when they get there, all they see is a blank room, and then they hear music coming from the floor above. When they get there, they see Abigail dancing strangely with Dean's decapitated body, and they stand there for a few seconds, stunned by the sight. However, when they make the decision to attack, Abigail jumps at Sammy and starts beating her, demonstrating that the garlic Sammy was carrying would not harm Abigail. Peter then tries to pull the vampire girl off of Sammy, but he is quickly knocked down and attacked with the crucifix he had around his neck. He is repeatedly struck by Abigail, leaving him covered in blood. Frank attempts to assist Abigail by attacking her with a wooden stake, but Abigail brutally counterattacks and pierces his leg. The three realize they have no chance against the vampire and leave the scene, with Abigail merely grinning and watching them go, obviously playing with them. They arrived at Joey's waiting area, where she had warned them not to rush into doing anything they believed would work against a vampire. In order to confirm that the vampire girl had actually fallen asleep when she administered the injection, Joey shows them the syringe she had previously used on her and tells them that there is something that might work. If they are successful in injecting the girl, it will be a nice night for the vampire. They decided to go look for her, but then they made the foolish decision to part ways. Joey went upstairs to look for Abigail, but all she found was a blood trail. Sammy is inspecting a lower area of the property when she is startled by some bats and tumbles into an ancient swimming pool. When she discovers that the pool is filled with human remains, she screams in horror. Peter is startled at that point by Abigail, who promptly follows him, causing him to scream and warn the others. Peter goes into a nearby room and locks the door with Abigail on the other side. He says through the radio communicator in his ear that everything is fine because he locked the vampire in the hallway, but he is surprised to discover that it is useless when Abigail smashes the door and enters where he is. He keeps running, the crazed vampire following him. When Peter is running, he glances back and is startled by Abigail's presence. He is then startled when a door opens in front of him, colliding with it and sliding down the staircase below. Frank unlocked the door and is likewise horrified when he sees the vampire. Joey and Sammy had already reached the scene when Abigail scales the railing and chases after Frank, pushing him and sending him sliding down the stairs. As he had threatened to divulge her father's identity before, Abigail mockingly asks him the color of her eyes as she slowly descends the stairs and gets on top of him. Joey comes out from behind the steps and tries to inject the vampire, but her attack is thwarted, and the syringe falls. She rushes to get it, but she is unable to reach the spot where the syringe fell. Frank embraces Abigail when Sammy notices that she is on the verge of death, but she is bitten in the arm, forcing her to scream in agony and retreat. At that moment, Abigail shows off another of her skills and grabs Frank's leg, causing him to levitate. Peter leaps from the staircase onto Abigail, and because of his strength, He holds the vampire girl for a few seconds before telling Joey to hurry because he can no longer. Luckily, Joey finds the syringe and gives Abigail the tranquilizer right away. Tranquilizer takes immediate action, weakening Abigail, who screams in rage, threatening to kill them all, pull off their heads, and then feast on their blood. Shortly after the girl falls asleep, everyone is relieved. When Sammy notices the bite on her arm, she worries about what will happen to her, but nobody can predict it because they do not know. Abigail wakes up a short while later, but she is trapped behind the metal bars of an elevator in the house. The girl tries to fool everyone by pretending to cry and pleading to be let go, but Joey tells her to stop acting like a child because she is very good at it. Abigail simply laughs and thanks her, claiming to have centuries of experience. Sammy yells at Abigail, asking what would happen to her since she was bitten and whether she will also become a vampire, as Joey tries to bargain with the vampire, claiming that they will release her if she tells them how to leave. When Abigail smiles and says, maybe, Sammy becomes frantic. Abigail tells them that she actually brought them there on purpose, that Lambert works for her, that there was never any ransom money, and that Sammy's true name was revealed after Frank tries to apologize to the vampire by claiming he did not know what she was when they abducted her. Jessica Herney claims that she began her profession by stealing money from her wealthy parents' account and then from other influential individuals. She goes on to discuss each member's prior transgressions before meeting Joey. Ana Lucia Cruz, Joey's real name, was a former military medic who was released from service after making a mistake during a crucial surgery while under the influence of drugs. Joey attempts to counter the vampire as well, but she simply states that she enjoys playing with her food and that they are identical to all the others she has brought to eat over the years. She then suggests that she will let 2 of them to survive if they release her. As time goes on, she lowers the price and declares that the only person who will survive is the one who releases her right now. Peter is terrified and aims his gun at his companion, but Frank claims the girl is lying. Despite this, Peter attempts to open the metal cage but is grazed by Joey, who hands him the gun and gives up. She then takes him to another location to treat his wound with Sammy's assistance, while Frank stays to watch Abigail. The girl tries to convince Frank to let her go by promising to leave his blood and organs with him, but Frank demands that she first explain how to escape the house. She tries to work out a deal by claiming that he will have to let her go as soon as she explains how to go. Frank accepts, and she informs him that there is a hidden door next to the bookshelf on the right wall in the ancient library that leads out. Then, when Abigail urges him to fulfill his end of the bargain, Frank begins to walk away. When Frank gets to the cage, he makes fun of her and asks why she is still so impressionable for her age. Abigail only begins to chuckle before abruptly bursting through the cage door and pushing Frank out of the way. She then leaves the prison, laughing and dancing strangely in Frank's direction as he lies on the ground. When Joey gets there, he sees Abigail almost killing him, so he decides to smash the wooden boards of a nearby window so that sunlight can enter and swiftly blow out Abigail's arm. Screaming in agony, Abigail withdraws into the shadows to observe her sun-damaged arm. Joey lifts Frank. They both flee as Abigail yells in anguish and fury upon seeing them. After running, they arrived at the library and positioned themselves in the sunlight entering through the window Joey had previously opened. Sammy is terrified of the sun and tests it with her finger, but she is glad that it does not harm her. Frank is annoyed to learn that the secret exit Abigail previously told him about was really a lie from the vampire. Joey continues by saying that Abigail is recovering and that they must find a way to leave. She then looks at a wall that appears hollow and begins to break it, but after some time, when everyone is worn out from the awful night, she gives up because it is not working and they must leave before nightfall again. In order to somehow reverse the locks on the metal plates on the doors and windows, Sammy advises shutting off the electricity in the house. Windows, they divided into 2 factions. Through the radio, Sammy travels with Peter and Joey and Frank. Joey, the communicator, cautions them to remain vigilant because Abigail is playing tricks on them while they are still searching for something. Peter urges Sammy to go on, saying they have managed to leave the area, but as he looks around, Sammy feels uneasy and notices that her arm has healed instantly. She then starts to hear whispers from Abigail in her head that say Sammy is now hers. At that point, Sammy drastically alters her expression and vanishes from Peter's presence for a moment. He looks around, hoping to see her, but is startled by her in the dark next to him, and she attacks him, biting and ripping a piece of his neck. After Sammy eats Peter, she calls for help from the others, claiming that Abigail is there. However, as Joey and Frank approach her, Abigail controls Sammy to dance ballet while enjoying the little sunlight in the room. She hears Joey arrive with Frank and tries to pretend to cry for Peter, but Joey stands motionless away from her, sensing something odd. When Sammy gets to her feet, Joey tells Frank to flee after realizing that Sammy is now a vampire, and they flee back to the library. And when they stand in the sun, Sammy shows there as well. Joey swiftly snatches a silver tray from the floor and reflects the sunlight squarely into Sammy, instantly vaporizing her, before Sammy assaults them both while speaking as though she were Abigail. They walk through a secret corridor as they start to hear recorded voices of phrases they have said in the past. When they reach the end, they find that monitors are recording everything, and it is Lambert who is monitoring, who also happens to be a vampire. At that point, a secret door opens next to them, and even though they know it is a trap, they choose to enter it because they have nothing else to do and night is coming again and they will not have a chance. Joey insists they will not make a deal, but Lambert says he wants to offer one. Lambert snatches her by the neck and claims to have been speaking with Frank when he disclosed that Abigail had threatened his entire family and had turned him away around 2 years prior for assisting Frank with something in New York. If he did not bring his father's enemies to eat while working for her. Lambert then suggests that in order for him to survive, he assist Frank in killing Abigail. However, in order to do so, Frank must also undergo transformation. Frank declines to become another puppet of Abigail, as he did with Sammy, but Lambert reassures him that he will not be because he will be like him and have complete autonomy. Additionally, he claims that he has already summoned Abigail's father there, and that they can murder both of them in order to seize control of everything going forward without giving it any thought. Frank agrees, and Lambert kills him after knocking Joey unconscious and pours some of his own blood into Frank's mouth to hasten the change. When Frank eventually transforms, he starts to alter and releases a lot of blood. When Joey awakens, she sees the entire scene and becomes terrified. Lambert tells Frank that he has his first victim, but as soon as he turns his back on Frank, accusing him of attacking him, Frank stabs him in the chest with a wooden stick, causing him to burst into 1,000 pieces. Frank then gives Joey instructions to run so he can pursue her, but Abigail suddenly appears behind them, shocked that they have located Lambert. She asks, laughing, if he tried to persuade him to work with them to kill her before Frank killed him. She then claims that the game is over there and pursues Frank without realizing that he has changed, jumping on him and being startled when Frank bites her neck. Joey takes advantage of this by rapidly pressing the release button for the house's doors and windows. She then collects her cell phone from a bag on the table and stumbles out of the room, but as she gets to the end of the hallway, she notices that the door to the library is now chained. At that point, Frank reportedly manages to kill Abigail, leaving her lifeless on the ground. When Joey realizes she cannot get away, she phones her son and leaves a message on the answering machine stating how much she loves him and always has. After killing Abigail, Frank shows up and slowly approaches her to kill her. Joey tries to attack him with a wooden stake but gets shoved, and the locked door bursts open, knocking her to the ground. She tries to defend herself, but he responds with violence and throws her to the ground again. She did her best to fight back against Frank, but it was no use. Frank hung her by the neck and told her he would kill her son too after killing her. He threw her to the ground, but before Joey hit the floor, Abigail returned and saved her. She asks to join forces with Frank because she cannot defeat him alone, and in return, she will allow her to leave the house alive to see her son again. When Frank gets to where they are, Abigail moves toward him, and using the distraction, Joey hits him with an iron bar and instantly traps him with it. Unable to bite him, Abigail leaps on him and punches him before kicking him again, knocking them both down. Abigail immediately gets up and kicks Frank in the face with her ballet moves, but he counterattacks and violently throws her to the ground. Joey attempts to hit him with the iron bar once again, but is halted and gets punctured below the shoulder. Abigail recovers from her injuries fast and stands up. Frank abandons Joey stranded on one of the library's wooden columns and turns back to Abigail. However, Abigail uses her ballet skills to hit Frank, who collapses to the ground. She attempts to strike him again by leaping from the stairs, but she is caught and Frank bites her neck once more to drain her completely. After leaving her on the ground, Frank approaches Joey and bites her in order to manipulate her into pursuing her kid on her own. As her first task after turning into a vampire, he gives her the order to get up and kill. But as she approaches Abigail as though she were under Frank's control, we see that Joey's eyes have not changed color like everyone else's. She then demonstrates that she is not under his control by attacking him without turning, but she is again blocked and thrown away, giving Abigail the opportunity to grab him from behind and attempt to bite him once more before being flung to the ground. Joey blocks him from behind with the iron rod, keeping his mouth closed while Frank grabs her. Abigail tries to penetrate Frank's chest with the wooden stick after he collapses to the ground. Joey arrives to assist, and the two of them eventually manage to kill him. Joey questions why Abigail has not changed yet, but Abigail assures her that since Frank was died, Joey will not undergo the transition. Abigail does not stop her as promised when Joey claims she has to leave right now, but before she can do so, the girl's father appears, frightening Joey, who collapses to the ground. Laser, as he is now known, claims that this is only one of the many names he has had over the years. He growls to frighten Joey, and Abigail tells him to stop, claiming that Joey saved her. However, Laser ignores her and screams in a terrifying manner, but Abigail does not intimidate herself and persuades him to let Joey go. Then he tells her that dinner time is coming up and she needs to hurry. After Abigail bids Joey farewell and promises to meet her again, Joey eventually escapes the terrifying land of death and, with relief, gets into her van and leaves. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this movie, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.